The crimson and blue lights pulsed rhythmically, illuminating the shadows that danced across my locked gate. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on me as two officers stepped out of their cruiser. My neighbor Karen was already theatrically venting her frustrations, arms flailing wildly as she insisted on the necessity of justice for what she deemed a community emergency. Just a week prior, I'd taken the drastic step of blocking off my driveway, a long-tolerated annoyance, because those who had used it for years had begun to wear away my patience and respect for my property. I sighed, knowing I had seen this play out before. The victimized citizen, the clueless officers, and Karen, my personal thorn in the side, egging them on. "Sir," called the older officer, his badge emblazoned with Sergeant Doyle. As he approached, we received a report about an unauthorized obstruction on what might be a public access road. I could feel irritation bubbling to the surface. "It's my driveway, private property. I have every right to block it off." "I don't think that's true. People have always used it," Karen interjected, her voice suddenly bolted to a new level of indignation. "It may be used, but that doesn't make it theirs," I shot back, feeling the tension rise. As expected, her anger grew. The younger officer, whose badge read Rivera, glanced at the thick stack of documents on my patio table. "Mr. Bishop, do you have proof of ownership?" I sighed, picking up the deed. "Right here. This driveway has been private property since the house was built. Nothing's changed except I finally got annoyed by the constant traffic." Sergeant Doyle skimmed through the papers, then looked back with a raised eyebrow. "Then why all the fuss now?" "Because you're ignoring the real issue here. This driveway is mine. What matters is the fact that people have overstepped for far too long." I gestured outward, trying to maintain composure despite the pressure building inside me. "There's a public road right there. This isn't the only way in or out of the neighborhood." Doyle sighed, returning the deed. "Legally, he's right. If it's private property, you have the right to restrict access." To this, Karen almost sputtered as realization struck her. "Are you serious? This isn't over." Rivera, with skepticism lingering, added, "With all due respect, sir, why now? Why close it all of a sudden?" My mind was racing. That was the real question. For decades, I had put up with trespassers cutting through my driveway like it was a neighborhood shortcut. But a week ago, everything had shifted. I had been digging near the edge of my property, daydreaming about expanding my workshop when my shovel struck something unusual, something steadfast and unnaturally buried beneath the layers of dirt. It was concrete, but not just any concrete. This was reinforced, industrial grade, and it didn't belong in the middle of my yard. Driven by curiosity, I dug deeper, breaking through years of neglect and discovering what appeared to be the lip of a long-sealed tunnel. From that moment on, the night had flipped on its head. Late that very night, my security cameras captured something strange. Two figures cloaked in darkness tread along my driveway, their gait stealthy, as if they were a part of the shadows themselves. They were neither friendly neighbors nor law enforcement. They lingered precisely where I had been digging, and then left as silently as they had arrived. The following morning, I woke to find my fence tampered with. The lock I had installed was clipped and replaced hastily with a new one that I hadn't touched. I reviewed my footage again and felt ice travel down my spine. At 3:27 a.m., two figures emerged from the night, one with a pair of bolt cutters, the other kneeling low, searching the earth as if having uncovered something they deeply sought. They took their time as they vanished without a trace, leaving me with a nagging sense of dread. That day, I heard Karen gossiping with another neighbor. Her voice had a hushed, urgent tone. It had morphed from outrage into something primal. Something was visibly troubling her, and her furtive glances toward my house confirmed that suspicion. Did she know something I didn't? Doyle focused intently on me, but I chose not to divulge any of the unsettling events. Instead, I shrugged and claimed I was merely tired of the trespassers. It was time to lock down my property. The younger officer, Rivera, still wore a skeptical expression. "Mind if we check out where you closed it off? Be my guest," I replied, a hint of annoyance edging my voice. The two officers approached the heavy steel gate I had installed just last week. Its robust construction evident. While they inspected it, I could feel Karen's accusing eyes boring into my back. "He's hiding something!" Her voice rang out, amplified by a sense of urgency. I turned to her, keeping my voice low. "Karen, I built this gate because I don't want anyone on my property anymore. You have no right to question that." For a moment, I detected a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Was it fear? Suddenly, a black SUV rolled past. It slowed slightly, almost as if the driver were weighing his options, but ultimately didn't stop at my home. However, I noted the way Rivera tensed, his gaze sharpening as the car cruised past our neighborhood. A signal of intent. After the police departed and Karen stomped back home in a huff, I returned to my workshop to salvage my thoughts. That black SUV had patrolled my block 3 times. Clarity began to settle in that, maybe, just maybe, I wasn't experiencing mere paranoia. With a pounding heart, I looked over the footage one more time. The SUV had been there again. Now more than ever. Urgency swept through me as that gnawing feeling solidified that I was now at the center of something larger than I could comprehend. The next morning, sharp knocks on my door jolted me from restless sleep. My heart galloped as I threw on a shirt and crept toward the sound, heart racing. Peeping through the peephole, I saw Rivera standing there, arms crossed, and an unreadable expression on his face. "What now?" I asked as I opened the door wide, enough to let him in. "Can we talk inside?" His voice shifted to a serious tone. I nodded and stepped aside, confusion swirling in my gut. "Listen," Rivera began, skipping pleasantries. "I need to know exactly what you found." "Look," I replied defensively. "You saw the paperwork. It's my property. What I do with it is my business." "Mr. Bishop," Rivera pushed, frustration edging his voice. "I know the law says that, but I can sense you're withholding information. After last night, it's imperative that you tell me if you're in danger." "Danger? From what?" I narrowed my eyes, contemplating how much to cave. After a moment, Rivera pulled out his phone, swiping a grainy image from his dashcam to show me. "This was taken near your place at 4:17 a.m. My stomach twisted. "You followed them," I accused softly, piecing together the puzzle even as alarm bells began to ring. "I was patrolling," Rivera admitted, his demeanor growing serious. "Caught it on my camera. Thought it was odd." "Odd? How?" I pressed, my chest tightening. "No registration, sir. Not in any database," he clarified, and dread settled over me. Whoever operated that SUV wasn't just your average nosy neighbor. "That's why I'm here," he continued. "What did you find under that driveway?" I swallowed hard, finally feeling an impulse to be transparent. "There's something beneath the driveway. Some kind of structure. I don't know how deep it goes, but it's old, and someone meant for it to remain undiscovered." Rivera nodded slowly, tension thick in the air. "Then we need to see it." I almost blurted a protest. Taking him there felt too risky, but held that instinct back. After a moment of deliberation, I said, "Okay, but it's on my terms. No backup and no radios. Just us." Rivera's jaw clenched in contemplation, but he eventually nodded. As we stepped outside, I felt the weight of unseen eyes lurking behind. Whoever had been watching wasn't done with me, nor was I prepared to walk away just yet. I led Rivera toward the back of my property, my senses heightened, acutely aware of the eerie stillness around us. When we arrived at the spot I had dug up, I showed him where I'd disturbed the dirt. As I pulled back the tarp, a sense of foreboding washed over me. The concrete was visibly undisturbed yet exuded an air of secrecy. Rivera knelt close, inspecting the seams. "This isn't normal," he said with a grim gaze. I know. That's the problem. It's cold. Almost like it's insulated. I replied, dread pooling in my stomach. As if summoned by my words, the low hum of an engine suddenly rumbled in the distance. My heart dropped. Another black SUV? I muttered under my breath. Rivera turned sharply toward the sound. Stay alert. Peering down the street, I saw an SUV creeping past again, deliberately slow. My stomach soured. The vehicle was unfamiliar, but it emanated an aggressive intent. Did you get a plate? I asked quickly. That's the problem, he said, glancing at his phone. This one isn't in any database either. It belongs to a government fleet, without a department linked. Trepidation radiated from me. What were they protecting? Why had they been keeping tabs on my driveway? This keeps getting worse, I muttered, feeling the blood drain from my face. If they know I'm here, they'll escalate things. I looked toward the concrete slab, anxiety overtaking me. What do you think is down there? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. I don't know, but I don't think you're ready to find out, Rivera said, his eyes widening. Ready or not, I don't have a choice, I managed. If they're willing to take drastic measures, I suggest you're strategic, Rivera replied, anxiety written across his features. Minutes later, we stood hyper-aware, the SUV still circling like a vulture. It was now, or never. Then a sudden knock at my door startled both of us. My pulse raced. Who could be? I moved toward the door, but Rivera stopped me. Stay back, he said, inching toward the door and peering through the peephole. It's Karen. What does she want? I asked, bemused but equally wary. Rivera opened the door just a crack as she looked in with wide, frightened eyes. For a moment, it felt like the dynamics had shifted again. She didn't march in with accusations, but rather with an urgent fear that took me off guard. We need to talk, she said, glancing around anxiously. About what? I asked incredulously, unsure of the significance of this sudden conversation. About them, she whispered, glancing nervously at Rivera and then back at me. The people watching you. My heart raced. I had never seen this side of Karen, one that held genuine trepidation. Before I could respond, Rivera stepped in. Speak, Karen. She took a breath, seemingly gathering her thoughts. I don't know who they are, but I know they've been watching you for a while. They don't like attention, ask too many questions, and they won't hesitate. Why are you only telling me this now? I pressed, desperate to keep the gravity of the situation clear. Look, she continued hastily, because I'm scared. I realized after what I saw last night that I can't pretend anymore. I scanned her face, biting back my astonishment. She was genuinely frightened. As she elaborated, she shared a dark family secret. Her brother's past. He used to work in real estate around here and discovered something. A discrepancy involving your property not being rightfully recorded. After that, men in suits came to his office, and 2 days later, his building burned to the ground. He quit his job, and we never talked about it again. My heart thudded, echoing in my chest. I felt a sick twist in my gut. And you don't think I'm going to get involved? She recoiled defensively. If they're willing to make sure I keep my mouth shut. Rivera cut in. If they're willing to come after you, then they won't hesitate to come after him too, he said, gesturing toward me. Karen turned, her focus on me again, her features grave. You have no idea what war you're stepping into. You need to stop. Digging. Asking questions. Everything. Her warning hung in the air. My mind reeled. I couldn't shake the fear that she could be right. Then I thought back to the tunnel. They wouldn't have buried it so deeply if it didn't matter. I can't walk away from this. I countered, my voice tense. Because you're a cop? She snapped at Rivera, who had stayed silent through it. You think that's going to protect you? You're running out of time, she added, looking from Rivera to me, urgency radiating from her gaze. We need to move, Rivera finally said, nodding. As I nabbed my keys from the table, Karen interjected cautiously. We can't go to the site. They're watching. Too late, I said. They already know what's beneath the driveway. The only way forward is to face whatever it is before they try to take it away first. With no further hesitation, Rivera and I exchanged glances of determination. We slipped out of the back door, each breath thicker than the last, a tangible weight of secret tension pressing relentlessly around us. As we descended into the darkening street, I could feel before, underfoot, what lay beneath. With each step, the reminder that we were heading straight toward a long-buried mystery, now surfacing deeper than any of us had dared expect. The air was heavy with anxiety as we traversed the eerie quiet of the night. Karen huddled close behind, wary and nervous. I felt like I was wading toward some unspoken dread. What could lie beneath? As I pulled the tarp back again, I could only hope that the resolve driving us forward wouldn't leave me with a harsh price to pay. The weight of unseen eyes lingered, but I refused to cower back. It was time to dig deeper, but the stakes were higher than ever. Time was running short, and I needed answers before the darkness consumed us all.